good morning. It's a pleasure to rise today on behalf of the official opposition to share our deepest condolences on the passing of the Right Honourable Brian Mulroney, Canada's 18th Prime Minister. I want to start by offering, of course, our most sincere sympathies to the family of Prime Minister Mulroney, his wife Mila, our colleague, the President of the Treasury Board and the member for York Simcoe, Ben, Mark, and Nicholas, and all of his grandchildren, family, friends, and loved ones, as they find themselves in the midst of such a huge loss. I want you to know that as you find yourselves navigating through this new grief, a nation is grieving right alongside you. Brian Mulroney's commitment to Canada and its people cannot be understated. He's left a legacy that will be remembered and recounted for generations to follow, and I want to reflect for a moment on what that legacy means as we face in this moment the very real and looming threat of climate change. Every day we are breaking new records, and not the good kind. But climate change denialism persists as a major challenge. Decades ago, when climate activism wasn't as loud or as visible, Brian Mulroney campaigned for the planet. Under his leadership, Canada broke ground on a number of environmental policies. It was Prime Minister Mulroney who led the signing of the Acid Rain Treaty with the United States. It was a unique first step in managing cross-border pollution, as well as, of course, there was the Montreal Protocol, an international treaty to ban CFCs that were burning a hole in the ozone layer. That's still one of the most successful international environmental treaties. I could go on listing his environmental accomplishments: the Canadian Environmental Assessment Act, the Environmental Protection Act, ratifying the Convention on Biological Diversity, recognizing conservation of biodiversity as a common concern of humankind. Under Prime Minister Mulroney's leadership, Canada was the first industrialized country to do so. His government released the Green Plan, with millions in funds and policies to bring carbon emissions under control. For Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, the environment and the Earth's well-being was not a partisan issue. He understood the importance of coming together to save the planet that we all share, and his actions on this matter reflected that. Many will also remember that under Prime Minister Mulroney's watch, Canada was one of the first countries that Nelson Mandela visited upon his release from prison after nearly 27 years. I don't have to tell anybody in this room probably, but Prime Minister Mulroney repeatedly called for the release of Nelson Mandela, and he took on Margaret Thatcher to impose sanctions on the apartheid regime. Back when I was a young thing, that was an issue that I cared very deeply about. And while there's no question that, certainly the fight for liberation in South Africa was won by South Africans, by people organizing and resisting, sanctions were an absolutely critical factor in applying international pressure to the apartheid state. Personally, I saw another side to that role that Canada played, because Canada also used, under Prime Minister Mulroney, our international development heft to support the frontline states in their resistance against apartheid as well. My family's life changed under Prime Minister Mulroney's policies. We were living in Newfoundland, and my father got a contract doing work for CEDA in international development in Southern Africa, working with the SADC states. At that time, there was enormous resistance to apartheid in South Africa. And his project was to ensure industrial energy conservation was taking place in those frontline states. And what was important about that was it allowed for those states to remain independent of the South African apartheid state. It was a critical thing, and it was another way, and I think there were many of these tactics that were used by Canada in that moment to use our policy and our money and our decisions to put pressure to end apartheid. It's something that changed my life, and it changed my family's life. Mr. Mulroney's legacy is folded into Canada's story, and that's quite a legacy to leave. He also leaves a more personal legacy for many of us in political life, as a mentor and as someone who was always willing to reach across party lines to give advice, even left me a message or two, I will say. And I was reminded at Ed Broadbent's memorial not very long ago another great Canadian, of their friendship. And a friend of mine was reminding me that at the inaugural Broadbent Institute Gala a number of years back, Mr. Mulroney sent in a lovely little video, and it started out with him saying, "Hello, Brian Mulroney here. Bet you're wondering what I'm doing at the Broadbent Gala." Anyways, but I know they had a very close friendship and respect for each other, and I think that was very important to Mr. Broadbent as well. On the other side of someone's passing, the loss feels so huge. It is huge, and it is sometimes insurmountable. This mourning of tributes is our human attempt to fill the vacuum that can otherwise feel so overwhelming. As we remember a prime minister and a global leader, we are really remembering a person, a brother, a father, a husband, and a valued community member. So to Caroline, to Mr. Mulroney's family, I can only hope there is some solace and smiles and warmth to be found in the very rich life that Brian Mulroney led. And I say this again, those whose lives were touched by your father across this country and around the world are standing right beside you, and I hope you are all feeling our support that is there with you today. Thank you.